So we worked really hard. They worked really hard. They did. But we just actually wanted to go over like the Christmas story, the true Christmas story, and give you some interesting facts about the real manger scene and Joseph and Mary. And so tonight we're going to do Mary, Did You Know? But we're also going to do Did You Know? Some interesting facts about the true story. So what do we know about Joseph?
Well, did you know that Joseph was a stonemason? He was not a carpenter of wood like we have today, but actually a stonemason. Wood in that particular area was very hard to come by. It had to be shipped in, making it very expensive. Everyone's houses and all the other buildings were made out of stone. Joseph was by no means a poor carpenter. He was highly compensated for his skills. Jesus was also a stonemason.
And did you know that when Joseph was espoused to Mary, that was a lifetime commitment, and the only way that he could get out of that commitment was to legally divorce her? So when she became with child, he could have actually had her publicly put away, and he could have actually had her stoned, but he chose to put her away privately. So we know that he was full of compassion, and he was merciful, and he was kind, and he was just the type of man that God needed to raise his son.
True story.
So what do we know about Mary?
Did you know Mary's parents were older and did not have any children? Her parents made a vow to God that if he would give them a child, they would dedicate her to God's services. When Mary was born, her parents did dedicate her to God's services and instilled in her to obey the voice of God. To help her grow spiritually, Mary's parents enrolled her in a special school for girls near the temple grounds that was designed for training young girls in the scriptures.
Did you know Mary's parents were wealthy and they used their money for the work of God? Mary's father was a scroll scholar, and he worked in the temple as a keeper of the scrolls.
Did you know Mary's father belonged to the royal lineage of David, and her mother Anna was a priestly descent of the family of Aaron? So Jesus sprang from a royal and priestly family in the natural and in the spiritual.
True story. So what do we know about the manger scene?
Did you know the closest way to Bethlehem from where Mary and Joseph lived was 70 miles, and the farthest was 90 miles? For a person in good shape, that could have taken 4 days to get there, but Mary being with child, it could have taken 7 to 10 days to get there.
Did you know that the inns were actually just second stories on bigger houses? Back then, Bethlehem was a tiny town, and all the people were returning from being taxed, so there was no room left for Mary and Joseph. Did you know that Jesus wasn't born in a wooden barnyard stable? Instead, he was born in a cave. Back then, wood was very scarce in that region, and all the houses were constructed from stone. Caves were used as shelters for the local shepherds and their flocks.
True story. Oh, wait. I shouldn't have said. Sorry, I was too quick.
Did you know the manger wasn't made out of wood? Instead, carved out inside the cave and served as a feeding trough for the animals?
True story.
So this was the reason that there was no room in the inn. It wasn't because Joseph was just a poor carpenter and he couldn't afford to get them a room. Actually, the whole world was on the move at that time to go back to their hometowns to be taxed. So with everyone coming into town and taking up the rooms, there was actually just no place for them to stay. And Micah prophesied 700 years before Jesus was born that he would be born in Bethlehem. So the Lord, or God, put the whole world on the move to make that prophecy come to pass, that because they lived in Nazareth, and he put the whole world on the move to make that prophecy come to pass, that he would be born in Bethlehem. And God will do the same thing for me and you when there's something in our life that needs to come to pass. If he has to put the whole world on to do that, he can do that. True story. So what do we know about the shepherds?
Well, did you know the shepherds the angels were sent to were actually Levitical shepherds? They were trained to take care of the animals used in sacrifices in the temple of Jerusalem.
Did you know the Jewish law required the sacrificial lambs to be born near Jerusalem so they could easily be transported for sacrifice? Since Bethlehem was so close to Jerusalem, the fields and caves in Bethlehem were used to raise the lambs for temple sacrifice. Did you know the shepherds would wrap the newborn lambs in strips of cloth called swaddling clothes to help protect them from injury? They would then place a lamb in a stone feeding trough called a manger until the priest came to inspect them and declared them without blemish, therefore fit to be used as sacrificial lambs. Baby lambs are very clumsy when they are born, so the shepherds would swaddle the newborn lambs to help prevent the future sacrificial lambs from being blemished by injuring themselves on jagged parts of the caves.
True story.
No.
So what do we know about the wise men? Am I in the wrong place? Oh, you got one more land. Sorry. They know their parts.
Did you know the reason Jesus was wrapped in swaddling clothes was to be a sign to the Levitical shepherds? God knew they would understand when they saw the baby wrapped in swaddling clothes what they were looking for and what it meant.
True story. So what do we know about the wise men?
Did you know that Jesus was actually 2 years old when the wise men came to visit? When they came to visit, they found him in his home in Nazareth, not in the manger in Bethlehem.
Did you know there were more than 3 wise men? There wasn't an exact record of how many, but we know there was at least 12.
Did you know when the wise men brought more than just 3 little wooden boxes? It could have took a caravan of animals and servants to deliver all the treasures and gifts they brought to Jesus. When the wise men opened their treasures and gifts they brought to Jesus, it was a massive amount.
Did you know God supernaturally orchestrated the arrival of the wise men just in time to deliver the financial resources needed to meet his own son's needs while the Holy Family would be on the run in Egypt? Living in Egypt was so expensive. Joseph had no legal right to work in Egypt. It would have required a massive amount of money for a foreigner to live there for 3 years plus with his family. The family would not have lived in a single place for very long, but would rather have been on the move, so they would have needed money for travel, food, housing, and protection along the way.
So what we have is the baby was a king born in a cave, wrapped lovingly by his mother with strips of cloth and laid carefully inside a trough for animals, also known as a manger, to be our sacrifice. True story.